If it had been announced that Dave Filoni would serve as Chief Creative Officer of Lucasfilm back in 2012, when Disney acquired them in the first place, fans would have been delighted. But now, a decade later, when that announcement actually came, fans overwhelmingly reacted with despondency, because by now, Dave Filoni has earned our distrust. This video is sponsored by Morgan & Morgan. Once the greatest entertainment franchise of all time, Star Wars today has been reduced to a punchline, and courtesy of South Park, it's a punchline that everyone knows and which manages to summarize the entire breadth of Lucasfilm's vision and strategy for Star Wars.
Put a ticket in, make a name and gang!
However progressive this and everything else they did may have been, the worldwide audience responded with increasingly staying away in droves and stubbornly refusing to pay for Star Wars merchandise and experiences. Shocking, I know, but the Star Wars brand is now in a position where it needs a savior. For a hot minute there, it looked like Jon Favreau was going to be that savior.
Is he though?
But Kathleen Kennedy would have none of that. But now she's found a new would-be savior in the guise of Dave Filoni. So, can he be the savior that Star Wars so sorely needs right now? Or could it be that he's not there to save anything at all? Because as we're about to see, something is amiss with this promotion. In this editorial, we'll go through the details about Dave Filoni's new position, what is off about it, and how it might not be to his advantage in the end. Either way, as we'll see, this promotion is not about fixing how damaged the Star Wars brand has become. Well, damage may be a strong term. Other things are usually associated with it, but you catch my drift. I was damaged that time when I busted my knee during sparring, and damages is what I should have sought after that, because it took me a year to recover. Alas, that is not the ways of my people, because we Norwegians know that even if we'd likely win in the end. Our bureaucracy is so complicated and our legal system so fraught with pitfalls that the fight just isn't worth it, so we tend to just suck up whatever injustice comes our way. But luckily, none of that applies to you. If you are injured, whether it be at the gym, or while you're out shopping groceries, or you're in a car crash or anything else, then you should absolutely seek legal counsel to fight for you, and then you might consider using Morgan & Morgan, the sponsors of this video. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm with over 800 attorneys operating in 49 states, Rhode Island being the only odd one out. Being that big not only means they have all-star lawyers with local experience, they also have a support staff of more than 4,000 ready to help you at any hour, as well as the resources to spend literally millions fighting for you. They make the whole process easy for you. With Morgan & Morgan, you can submit a claim and have a lawyer review your case with only 8 clicks on your phone. They can quickly determine if you have a case, and should you proceed, you can submit your case details, sign contracts, upload documents and medical records, all from your cell phone. Best of all, you have nothing to lose, because it costs you nothing if they don't win. So start your claim with Morgan & Morgan, the largest injury law firm, in just 8 clicks at forthepeople.com/midnightsedge, or by dialing #law, that's #529 on your phone. With that, let's return to Dave Filoni's new position. Some of the headlines, and even some of the videos made about this topic in the past few days, almost give the impression that Dave Filoni, you know, that Star Wars animation dude whom Kathleen Kennedy forced upon Jon Favreau when he was developing The Mandalorian, would now be the James Gunn or the Kevin Feige of Lucasfilm, outranking even Kathleen Kennedy in creative matters. Any such conclusion was premature. In reality, not a whole lot has changed. Filoni has had the position of Chief Creative Officer for a little while already. It's only making headlines now because his new position was the topic of a November 21st paid-for puff piece in Vanity Fair. Here, it should be noted that not a whole lot of people in the built-in Star Wars audience read Vanity Fair, but it is Kathleen Kennedy's preferred outlet for highly planned and paid-for pieces of information dissemination. So Vanity Fair it is. Let's see what they have to say. The Vanity Fair paid-for puff piece reads: Dave Filoni has a new mission in the Star Wars universe after guiding Rosario Dawson's Force-wielding hero to distant celestial realms in the first season of Ahsoka. The writer, producer, director, who started out working alongside George Lucas on the animated Clone Wars show nearly 2 decades ago, has ascended to a new position at Lucasfilm, one that will give him input into all the galactic storytelling going forward. Now, I'm what's called Chief Creative Officer of Lucasfilm, Filoni tells Vanity Fair, which places him into the development process much earlier and in a much more expansive capacity than his previous advisory duties. In the past, in a lot of projects I would be brought into, I would see it after it already had developed a good ways. So that's the first takeaway here, and honestly the most important. Dave Filoni, being a prominent co-showrunner alongside Jon Favreau and later showrunner in his own right, used to be informed of what happened elsewhere in canon at a much later stage in development than he is now when he's Chief Creative Officer. Of course, with a title like that, you'd think that he wouldn't merely be brought into projects earlier. No, you'd think no project got started at all unless he initiated it. That is not the case though. Vanity Fair continues. Filoni will now work more directly with Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy and alongside Carrie Beck, a veteran producer turned head of development, to originate and shepherd the next generation of Star Wars shows and movies. In this new role, it's opened up to basically everything that's going on, Filoni says. When we're planning the future of what we're doing now, I'm involved at the inception phase. Okay, let me translate that. What was said here is Kathleen Kennedy remains in charge, Carrie Beck is second in command, while Dave Filoni, nominally the Chief Creative Officer, is allowed to be in the room. But the only thing he is chief of is ensuring that Kennedy and Beck don't run out of coffee, because in all creative matters he defers to them. Vanity Fair continues. Now that Filoni will take on the role of Chief Creative Officer, what does it mean for other writers, directors, and producers? I'm not telling people what to do, Filoni says. Well, that's what a real Chief Creative Officer would do, but as we've seen, title aside, Filoni isn't that, and this just proves it further. He continues, but I do feel I'm trying to help them tell the best story they want to tell. I need to be a help across the galaxy here, like a part of the Jedi Council almost. He described his responsibilities as understanding the intent of the filmmakers and being a resource to them, based on his mentorship under Lucas himself. Yeah, that never actually happened. And his years spent steering the Clone Wars, Rebels, and Ahsoka. Literally, hours now of Star Wars storytelling I have done, he said, before pausing to rethink his syntax. See, I even phrased that like Yoda. Oh my god. Anyway, that's how you know this is a paid-for puff piece. In other words, what Filoni is saying here is that his responsibilities as Chief Creative Officer really amount to little more than what Pablo Hidalgo already was doing at the story group. So that leaves the question, what's the point in giving him this sexy job title that does not reflect what he's doing or what little power he actually has? It's time to enter the speculation zone. The first line of speculation is that this new title, which doesn't really come with that much power, may be a reward for good and loyal service to Kathleen Kennedy. Remember, Jon Favreau, fans' last hope for Star Wars, hasn't been associated with Star Wars in any official capacity since his character died while facing overwhelming opposition in Season 3 of The Mandalorian, which I'm sure wasn't symbolic of anything at all. And Dave Filoni? Well, he suddenly went from co-showrunning with Jon Favreau to showrunning all of his own, and even getting his own Star Wars movie, all while continuing Kathleen Kennedy's mission on screen.
Put a ticket in, make her name it gay!
Kathleen Kennedy, for her part, hasn't really said anything more about Jon Favreau other than when he has to be name-dropped alongside Dave Filoni. But him, she can't praise enough.
I think people are really excited for Dave Filoni.
And we sat down and talked with Dave about it. You know what we're seeing, and Dave talked a lot about this. Obviously, John and Dave. You know, I wouldn't do it without Dave.
Yeah.
I mean, Dave created so much of what was in Clone Wars and Rebels, and well, that's really building toward what Dave's doing in the feature space. Certainly looking at what Dave's been doing with Ahsoka, he's, you know, what's great about Jim is he's a writer-director, much like Dave is. So that Dave is very influenced by Kurosawa and Japanese films. Dave's.
Long story short, this apparent promotion could simply be a reward for a job well done. But there could be something more sinister to it as well. In our November 22nd live stream, my good friend, fellow panelist and working industry professional Script Doctor alerted me to another possibility, which I think is worthy of consideration. He instantly spotted parallels between Filoni's current promotion and the promotion of Victoria Alonso to President, Physical and Post-Production, Visual Effects and Animation Production at Marvel Studios back in September of 2021. That was also a new position created for her, although her day-to-day responsibilities didn't really change that much. But there's a flip side to such a sexy title. You see, sometimes in the realm of politics, corporate and otherwise, the occasional human sacrifice is required, and only humans of a certain standing will do. Like, for instance, as a purely hypothetical example, if a movie like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania were to unexpectedly flop, proverbial heads will have to roll in atonement, and a random receptionist won't do. A producer like Victoria Alonso, who oversees post-production and visual effects, also won't do. So then the corporate overlords who want their tribute may start to look real hungrily at Kevin Feige, the president of Marvel. But if those powers that be were offered Victoria Alonso President, Physical and Post-Production, Visual Effects and Animation Production, now that would be a different matter. An executive with a sexy title as that would make for such worthy sacrifice that Kevin Feige can weather a few more flops before the corporate overlords start looking hungrily at him again. And for those that may have missed the metaphor, following the failure of Quantumania, it was indeed Marvel's newly minted President, Physical and Post-Production, Visual Effects and Animation Production that lost in the corporate Game of Thrones. Now, with a title like Chief Creative Officer, Dave Filoni would also make for fine human sacrifice the next time the corporate overlords call for that in Lucasfilm, and he didn't qualify as that before. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying there's a plot to get rid of him or anything like that. Lord knows, if Kennedy wanted to, he'd be gone already, just like everyone else with even a modicum of love for the vision of George Lucas. But what just happened here is that Dave Filoni just got promoted into the upper echelon of a company that is failing across the board. For whatever reason, Bob Iger has been happy to let Lucasfilm fail thus far, but if he ever were to start holding them accountable for their failures, then being the last one hired is historically not a good place to be. What is really not in a good place though is the Star Wars franchise itself, and by extension all of its fans. Disney is failing across the board right now, across all business areas. But it would appear no one told this to Kathleen Kennedy or to Lucasfilm, because despite not having made any money for Disney for years, despite all of their projects flopping, both on Disney+, in bookshelves, and in comic book racks, Kathleen Kennedy and her acolytes carry on, full speed ahead. The puff piece reads, "At the Star Wars Celebration fan convention this past spring, a number of new projects were announced by Kennedy, including a feature film from Filoni that would help bridge the decades-long gap between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. All the titles from Star Wars Celebration are still on the books, Lucasfilm officials say, including a historical epic about the early origins of the Force from Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny filmmaker James Mangold, and a story revisiting Daisy Ridley's Rey from director Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. Upcoming television projects include The Acolyte, set in the High Republic era about a century before the Star Wars story fans first encountered in the 1977 original, and Skeleton Crew, a show about a group of lost young space travelers set sometime after the Empire's defeat in Return of the Jedi. As president of Lucasfilm, Kennedy will continue leading the overall company, and Beck's role will involve recruiting other storytellers into the Star Wars fold. No doubt those sharing Kennedy's worldview, while Filoni weighs in on a narrative level. That right there, that's the real message here. Everything else is fluff. Kathleen Kennedy remains firmly in charge. Carrie Beck executes the will of Kennedy and will hire others who do the same. They are moving forward with all the projects none of you want to see, and as for Dave Filoni, if it wasn't clear enough from Ahsoka, he too is fully on board with the vision and mission of Kathleen Kennedy. He may not tell others what to do, but he doesn't have to, as no one with any interest in doing anything other than Kennedy's bidding is going to get hired in the first place. As long as Filoni is in agreement with Kennedy and Beck, and there's nothing to suggest that he isn't, well, then he has pretty much unlimited power to reshape Star Wars into their joint vision, where up is down, the Force is female, the Jedi are evil, and black is white. And lest we forget, Ahsoka is probably all over the place, because that's really important to Filoni. There was once a secret war over the soul and future of Lucasfilm and Star Wars, but from where I'm sitting, it looks like the war is over, the good guys lost, and Filoni has long since joined the dark side, and by all outwardly accounts, subverted Jon Favreau's plans to that end. So, get ready for Heir to the Empire, as reimagined by Dave Filoni and signed off on by Kathleen Kennedy. Disney's attention right now is at Marvel, where they at the very least are trying to pivot, while at Lucasfilm they seem determined to prove that they can and will exceed even the worst of South Park memes.
Put a chick in it, make her gay!
That's the real message here. So, what are your thoughts on this? Are you excited for what Filoni will bring in his new position? Let me know in the comments. And before you go, if you've been injured, why not start your claim with Morgan & Morgan, the largest injury law firm, in just 8 clicks at forthepeople.com/midnightsedge, or by dialing #law, that's #529 on your phone.